Hi, everyone. Hello from Blue Willow Bookshop in Houston, Texas. I am Kathy Berner, the event coordinator at the shop. My colleagues and I are honored to host this virtual event celebrating the publication of Alexis Hall's novel, Confounding Oaths. Thanks so much to our partners at Del Rey for working with us on this event. So let's welcome Alexis Hall to the conversation.
Hello.
Hello.
Took me just a second longer than it usually does to find the mute button. Hi, everybody.
How you doing?
I am doing okay. I think I've been saying it's muggy over here. Do you have is muggy a phrase in America?
Muggy is definitely a phrase here.
Yeah.
And I know how it is. We've had that. It's not muggy today, but then it's going to be muggy again because there's a tropical storm that's going to form in the Gulf of Mexico and just kind of hover along the
Oh
coast.
yeah.
That'll be super fun. But we live here, we're used to it, although we'd prefer it didn't happen. So I'm so excited to be celebrating this lovely book with you. Please admire the way the nails match.
Oh yes, very cool. Yes,
Yes.
picking out Radiante's colors. I believe the term is color story.
Oh,
Apparently this is a thing about choosing color schemes for this kind of. It might surprise you. I'm not a visual artist, but yeah, I believe the term that he uses is
no,
a
but
color
you
story.
have an amazing visual artist who
I do.
does the artwork for this series.
Yeah, Radiante is amazing.
Oh, it's so beautiful. And I love the robins appearing again. And I love the differences and the similarities. It's just such a
Yeah,
gorgeous color
no,
and
it's beautiful.
cover. Okay, I did that. And because I'm so on the ball, again, I don't have the bookmark or the book plate to display, but I promise you they do exist and they're really cool and they're not cursed.
I think this is the first time you've forgotten it in now.
I know,
Fine.
but guess what? I do still have my for real lemon meringue pen.
It's upside down.
I've got my Lady for a Duke bookmark, but no, I don't have the
Yeah.
other. I'm sorry.
It's all right.
What was I going to say? So Del Rey, and I'm guessing in collaboration with you, created a Confounding Oaths playlist, which is fabulous and is going to become some of my new working music, which it's really, really good. And I love the vibes.
Thank you.
Really do. Turning to this, okay, now I want you to get ready. I'm going to compliment.
That's right. I'll cope. I'll try and hack it.
I am in awe of this book because you pulled together so many different threads, so many different characters, so many side stories, social commentary that you wove together beautifully. And in the hands of a less skilled author, it would have been a mess. It would have
Thank you
been
very much. I'll be honest. I felt like it was kind of this close to becoming a mess all the way through, but I'm glad it wound up being unmessy.
It is messy because the people's lives are messy, especially Mr. Caesar's life. And there's beauty in that mess.
Oh yeah, it's a mess.
But
Like,
really,
that's kind of his whole deal.
all of those threads, and I mean, I say it every time, so I'm sorry if it sounds like a broken record,
okay.
but I see what you're going to try to do, and then I watch you do it. And that is one of the great things that I really enjoy about reading so much of your work is you try so many different things, and I'm probably a little biased, but I don't care. You pull it off every time.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Look at you. That's personal growth.
I know. Yeah. Sorry. I will admit, I also actually clicked on the share screen button, but I think everything's fine.
No, you're fine because I don't think you're allowed to do it. I have the settings.
I'm not. It told me I'm not allowed. There's so much weird stuff now on this version. It hasn't got the little intrusive AI assistant thing that I find very creepy that you get on some.
I know. I think we've successfully shut that down on ours. We tried very hard.
Yeah.
So, side note, friends, behind the scenes, we were bemoaning our new Zoom setups and trying to figure things out. So going back to Confounding Oaths, the thing that I really love about it, the more I thought about it, is that because the premise is in, queer magical Bridgerton, if Midsummer was
If
canon.
Midsummer Night's Dream was canon, is the other way I sometimes put it. Yeah.
Narrated by Puck.
Yes.
There are so many different ways you can read. I mean, obviously you read it the way you read it, but there are so many different ways you can spend time with it. You can look, you can read it academically and look for all the breadcrumbs that you sprinkled through it. You can use it as a vocabulary study guide, or you can go down countless delightful rabbit holes.
Oh, I'm so glad there are rabbit holes for you.
They're like even just from the beginning, from the prologue, the one about the white serpent, like
that was made up.
But see, do you know that? No, I found so many stories about white serpents in Scotland.
Lambton worm, that kind of thing.
Yes, and that, and then, but there was also another one about a serpent that got cut up, and then if the head disappeared, you had to. If the head disappears, it comes back even stronger. I was thinking kind of
there's an awful lot of them. Like there are awful. So I mean, it's not based on, so because the other references are things that definitely like the beer flood thing really happened in 1813 or something. But yes, that obviously wasn't a real serpent devouring anything. But yeah,
no, but like so I went down that route, and then of course I started discussing it with my partner who plays Dungeons and Dragons. So he was like, "Oh." I fear that his comrades may face a new enemy soon.
Oh, excellent! Yeah, no, I need to see if Wizards will let me do a supplement. They won't. Also, working with Wizards would be complex because I'm sorry, there's a lot of discourse around the new edition of D&D because it is very expensive, and Wizards of the Coast have some so business practices.
Yeah, no, John still uses the OG. He has those and still uses that for a lot of his inspiration, but builds his own. But yes, there is a lot of discussion of that. But anyway, I just love it. It makes me so happy. And the color palette of this cover.
Color story. That's the term.
Color story.
Anyway, I don't know it.
This is my wardrobe, which was I was like, yeah, I could wear. Okay, anyway. I'm digressing again. But switching quickly to audio. So the audio comes out October 8th.
Yes.
And it is, again, Anika Okoye, who is such an accomplished narrator. I am so excited that you got her back.
Yes, so good. Yeah, we had to wait a bit, hence the delay. But
yeah, but that, patience is a virtue.
Absolutely.
Do you listen to your audiobooks?
I do, yes.
And do you listen to other audiobooks?
Sometimes, yes.
So Naneka is such an accomplished narrator. She also narrated Forged by Blood by Ehigbor Okosun, who is based in Austin, Texas. And
cool.
And the new one comes out in a couple of months. So we're just thrilled for her.
Excellent.
So this book hasn't just delighted me. It's delighted so many readers, and we got so many messages to pass on to you from readers around the world, like Sue, who just sent this whole beautiful note thanking us for working with you and for sending her books. And we thank Sue for buying books, as we thank many of you for doing that too. But it's so wonderful to have that sense of connection with so many of your fans. So thank you, Alexis. We're so grateful to have that.
That's okay.
So now I'm moving to questions that were pre-submitted, and then we'll move to questions that you submit during the event. Here's one from Carrie. Have you had any moments where a character you were writing surprised you with something they said or did? And if so, did it affect the story?
This is an interesting one. I am something you'll encounter a lot over the course of tonight's event, if you haven't already got used to it from all the other events you might have been at, is that I respond to most questions by analyzing the question. I strongly believe in not mystifying writing. There definitely are some writers who do kind of like to talk about their characters as if they are real independent people with real independent kind of lives in this sort of, and that may well be how those people experience it. It might well be. I personally like to maintain awareness that ultimately I am in charge. I do control what my characters say and do. I think that experience for me, the way I will tend to describe it, is that like very often there will be moments when what it makes sense for a character to say or do wasn't what I initially planned for them to say or do. Um, I could still make them do it. It just wouldn't make sense. Um, and I think that's probably. I don't want to speak for other people. I don't want to maybe. Yeah, I don't want to judge what other people are feeling when they write things. But I think that's my version of that. It's like a good example actually is that in 10 Things That Never Happened, I had originally not intended for Sam to go back to plumbing. I'd originally intended for him to kind of move on, do something else, maybe go into event planning. Um, and it's not that Sam didn't want to do that. Sam isn't a real person. Sam is a fictional construct that I control. He's made entirely out of words. Um, but it didn't feel right to me for his story. I didn't feel I could write that in a way that felt authentic to the character. And I had some secondary questions to ask myself about, well, like, if he just kind of gives up on a blue collar job, like, I don't necessarily want to be suggesting that being a plumber is incompatible with with having a happy ending. And actually, particularly in some kinds of working class culture, like sticking with the family business is very important, and it's the kind of thing that would have been important to him. So it felt true. I think there are times when there is a process of discovery with writing, and again, I don't like to use mystifying language, but there is a process of finding out what you think about stuff. It's like and I don't think this is a thing that's unique to writing. I think it's unique to any kind of almost any kind of self-reflection. Like sometimes you do need to think about what you want or what you think about something. Sometimes you need to interrogate your own thoughts. And when you're ultimately writing is putting your thoughts on page, and that means it involves there's a concept in education called metacognition, thinking about thinking. And I think a lot of writing is metacognition. And I think that's maybe how I describe the being surprised by your character's feeling is it's metacognition. It's realizing that you didn't it's realizing you don't necessarily think what you thought you thought.
Yep, that makes perfect sense. And also, I'm glad that Sam became a plumber because it just felt, well, it made my heart happy. And just
Oh,
knowing
thank you.
he was still like there was still that connection with his family, even though.
Yeah, and that was the balance that was difficult to strike because you didn't want to completely sever that connection, but also I didn't want to, like I think because the original plan was I kind of wanted him to feel he could move past that, but I think you can move past something without severing it completely, and I think it was the right call in the end.
Oh, it absolutely was, because the moment when the reader realizes, and you
Hmm.
don't really say it,
Hmm.
you show us, you don't tell us, with
Hmm.
that phone call on Christmas Day about
Yeah,
the faucet. I mean, that's one of my favorite bits
yeah.
when he says back to the customer and then going out and he just described, I walk out to the van that says,
Hmm.
you know, it's perfect. I love it.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for that. I like that metacognition. I like thinking about it like that. Um, Here is one from Stacy. How do you write your books? Do you write them longhand or on a computer?
I write them on a computer in Word. I used to use LibreOffice but so I used to use OpenOffice and I used LibreOffice because that's kind of the more fully open source version. OpenOffice got bought by someone. I now just use Word because publishers use Word and it's a lot easier to do track changes back and forth editing stuff if you're just in the same all using the same software. Obviously, monopolistic issues here with Microsoft. Um, Again, linking back to the first question, I don't like mystifying writing. I think it's important to realize that you don't need special I know there are some people who love their special writer software, and that's great. If you use Scrivener or some, or I don't know, World Anvil or whatever, like kind of, you know, whatever product that gets advertised on a YouTube video that you've picked up and enjoyed and found it's helpful to you, that's great. Um, I think it's really important, and I think it's important to recognize you have to spend money, basically. And obviously, Microsoft Word does cost money, but LibreOffice doesn't, and it's the same thing. um, like you just need the whatever machine you are using to listen to this, you can write a novel on. It almost certainly comes pre-packaged with software you can write a novel with. Um, I wouldn't personally try and write a full novel on a phone. I think it would be uncomfortable. But you if you're listening to this, you probably have access to a thing with a keyboard.
Yeah, well, thank you for that. Here's one from Erica. Miss Penworthy makes a reappearance in Confounding Oaths as a member of Miss Bickle's avid readerdom and a prolific writer of romantic fiction. Did you know she was a writer when you initially created the character, or is the Penworthy surname a happy accident?
It's a pure happy accident. It's yeah, no, I think looking back, Erica Penworthy was always the kind of person that would be in Miss Bickle's avid readerdom, just because she's horny on Maine. Um, like she's clearly the person that would be writing lesbian Jane Austen slash. Like that's just the kind of person she obviously is. But honestly, until I got the question, it hadn't even occurred to me that I think partly because I live with my head so much in etymology space. So with pen in a name, I assume means head. Like Pendragon.
Yeah. Yep. Okay.
But yeah, no. Looking back, it is ironically appropriate.
I'm going to start looking on AO3 for Miss Penworthy.
Hmm.
Um, Here's one from Nina. Recently, I've been drawn to Alexis's books because of the realistic conversations and character build. I find it rare to be able to create such quality, truth, and was wondering if there are any plans of making a book series into a TV series.
Uh, I d- I don't. I'm not in a position to have those plans. Like I think sometimes people kind of ask me whether this is something I'm going to do, and I have vaguely heard that the person who wrote Heartstopper was very strongly involved in making the Netflix series of That's a Reality. I don't know the context, don't know the details, don't know what that person's background was, but I I don't have those skills, those contacts, or those resources. Like I have literally no idea how I would go about doing that. People do often option my books, but let's be super clear that like what optioning is in practice is someone offering to pay you a small amount of money to not make a film out of your book. Like that's the reality.
Well,
Um,
yep.
like like I wonder like occasionally I'll go back and I'll watch like a classic movie and like the credits will be incredibly short because back then you could make a movie with about 20 people, whereas
Right.
you look at the credits of any visual medium these days and you think of like the sheer number of people involved and you compare that to me on my copy of Microsoft Word on my phone slash computer. um like just the failure, yeah, but basically, yeah, like the failure rate of stuff in that medium is so high. Like like it's not like 1% of things that get picked up that actually get made. It feels like they're doing adaptations of stuff all the time, but they really, really, really aren't. Um,
Yeah, no, it's true. And so many, I think it's because there's so many streaming services.
mhm.
And so they are always looking for content.
Yeah,
And it is
and
a
they're also looking to
challenge
get
for them
content
to
away
find.
from their competitors. I think is the other thing.
Yeah,
Which is it's yeah, it's there's so much stuff out there, but you don't quite realize how small a fraction of the stuff that's out there is because it takes hundreds of people to make a TV show and one person to write a book. So
exactly.
as a result, there's hundreds more books and TV shows.
Yes, absolutely. Um, so well, I mean, it would make me really happy if one came to pass, just for you and for us. And again, you have very little control over the result of it, but it would still be cool.
Hmm.
So,
No, it would be very cool.
yeah. Okay, here's one from a different Kathy, other than me. I read For Real after Jen and Sarah swooned about it on Fated Mates. It's the first romance I've read. Now I've devoured a handful of your wonderful, super well-written books. I'm interested to find out whether there's been an uptick in the number of romances people are reading, specifically among women readers. To what do you attribute that? Also, I noticed many of these books appear to be written by women who are definitely or likely straight. Is this problematic? I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Okay, so this is going to be another answering the question by interrogating the question thing, and this is going to involve talking about World of Warcraft, Broadway, and possibly the Daily Mail. Um, let's start with Daily Mail. There's a website in the UK called Kill or Cure, which is just links to Daily Mail. Daily Mail is a tabloid newspaper. Links to Daily Mail articles, and it says its job is to chronicle the Daily Mail's ongoing campaign to categorize all inanimate objects as either causing or preventing cancer. Because like you must get this with tabloids or with that kind of newspaper in your own country, where like every other day there's a thing. It turns out this causes cancer. It turns out this prevents cancer. Like, and you put them all together, and it's just like, peas cause cancer and haircuts cause cancer, but peas also prevent. And it's ongoing campaign to categorize everything.
Wow.
And I think one of the things I want to gently address is I think internet culture has a slight tendency to want to categorize everything as either problematic or fine.
Okay.
You know what I mean? And actually, kind of everything is problematic. The only things are either problematic or perfect, and nothing is perfect. Problematic just means has problems. Like there are problems or potential problems with literally everything. There's a reason that for a while my Twitter bio included the phrase "your problematic fave." Um, like you can like nothing is immune to criticism. Um, in terms of like, so first of all, I don't like using MM as a label for fiction that happens to be about two men. For the broader umbrella term LGBTQIA plus fiction. Um, that has definitely got more popular in recent years. Like that's just a sort of factual market truth. I'm selling more books. And red, white, and blue, real blue was a thing, and that kind of shifted the market. That is a thing. Um, I am skeptical about the narrative of the popularity of that kind of fiction amongst women readers, especially amongst straight women readers, is a complex one. This is where this is the Broadway and World of Warcraft side of the discussion. In World of Warcraft, most people play their own gender. Using that in the very broad sense, it's like my understanding is in some section of the trans community, like kind of people who always play female characters, people who are assigned male at birth and always play female characters is seen as kind of an egg thing. But generally, people who identify as men play men, people who identify as women play women. But also, the overwhelming number of people who play World of Warcraft are men, which means the majority of female characters in World of Warcraft are played by men, even though also people disproportionately play their own gender. So if someone is a woman, they are very likely to be playing a woman in World of Warcraft, but they're also very likely to be just not playing World of Warcraft. And in the same way, when you talk about the popularity of LGBTQIA plus fiction amongst quote unquote straight women, like most people are straight. Straight people make up the majority of the population. So even if something is disproportionately popular Even if the audience for something is disproportionately queer, probably the majority of the audience will still be straight people.
Right.
And I think what's interesting is, I suspect this is what's interesting is I suspect this is also true of Broadway. I'm sure if you go into the audience at the average Broadway show, like more than 50%, like gay people aren't going to make up literally more than half the audience. But no one says, why is Broadway so popular with straight people? The stereotype is that Broadway is popular with gay people. Um, and so
Yes.
so there's a large part of like the reason that like the majority of if it is the case that the majority of people reading LGBTQIA plus romance, and romance is not all fiction obviously, um may well be straight women, but that is because the majority of people who read romance are straight women, and even if they make up a smaller majority of people reading LGBTQIA plus romance, um that's not going to stop them being a majority, but also like why is that what we focus on when we don't ask the same questions about, say, Broadway? Um, I think the other thing I really want to talk about is particularly people who write that kind of fiction, particularly, and here I am going to use NM as a shorthand because like I very strongly don't believe in policing people's identities. Um, Quite a lot of people who write fiction about who write romance fiction with gay male protagonists present as women and may or may not mention in their bios they're married to men. That means essentially nothing. Um, yeah, they might be straight cis women. They might be trans men who aren't out. They might be bisexual women who aren't out. They might be bisexual women who are out, but not to you, babe. They there's I do appreciate the like it's not wrong to think about questions of voices like own voices was a thing for a long time because people did feel that it's important for stories from within a community to be told by members of that community, and that is true. But so the group that I think originally pioneered that kind of the whole hashtag own voices thing, I think they're called We Need Diverse Books. And they like after a while actively disavowed it and actively said they were going to stop using it because it was leading to so much gatekeeping, so much speculation. And I very strongly believe that so if you've been following the Olympics recently, you'll be aware of the absolute fuck awful transphobic, but also like I suppose just misogynistic shit show around I'm gonna pronounce it really wrong, but I think her name's Amin Khalif, the Algerian boxer.
Mhm.
Um and again, it's just full of people doing internet detective bullshit, trying to like prove that this person is really a man, which is fucking gross. Um and like if it's fucking gross to do that in women's boxing, it's also fucking gross to do that in like LGBTQIA plus fiction as well. It is equal. Something I occasionally talk about is are you familiar with the I think Hugo Shortlis's short story known as The Helicopter Story or I Sexually Identify as an Attack Helicopter? It was a few years ago now.
Okay, I'm writing it down.
It was a science fiction short story set in a world in which people are assigned a gender at birth, and in which that gender is sometimes attack helicopter. And it was a trans woman kind of reappropriating the alt-right meme of well, I identify as an attack helicopter. I should probably stop doing that voice. To explore gender. But the author whose name was Isabel Fall was like a trans woman who was exploring her identity through fiction, which a lot of people do. She didn't publish huge amounts of biographical details, so there was rampant internet speculation and an awful lot of people of the thinking they can always tell variety, very firmly coming to the conclusion that only a man could have written that story. And that got so bad that she, like, as far as I know, attempted suicide and detransitioned. Because uh, so broadly speaking, the TLDR of it is, yeah, like you can ask meaningful questions about whose place it is to write stories about particular demographics if you want to, but I think we've seen enough now of the real harm that is caused to people by policing their but policing their identities, by forcing people to out themselves. Like, yeah, be that like actors who've had to out themselves when they were criticized for playing gay characters,
Um,
or people who've had to like disclose sexual abuse experiences to defend their right to write about that in a book. Like, I think we need to get to a point where we are realizing that maybe we should care less about the identities of writers. And like if someone is actively claiming to be writing about their own experience and they are lying, that's a different thing. But if someone is not claiming to be writing about their experience, then take it take what they write on its merits and don't. I think one of the things that's difficult is that I think people are often I think people are often looking for a book to be like the book you read so that you know about like the issue or the group. One of the things that I have constantly said about because I write I try to write about I I hate saying I try to write about diverse characters because it feels self-aggrandizing and I don't like the commodification of diversity, but I do write about people who have identities that are not my identity because I think it's important for those people to be represented in my stories. But one of the things I will always say to my readers is, yeah, don't learn about stuff from my books. And I know you say some lovely things about like kind of how much you discover from my books, how much my books introduce you to, but like, you know, my books are entertainment. They are not there to teach you what it's like to be a member of the demographic groups I'm writing about, whether I share an identity with those groups or not. Um, and I think sometimes like people are searching for a kind of almost a commodified authenticity, which is really difficult.
I I think so, but I also think I agree with you on many of your points, and thank you for that very detailed thing. And I will send everybody the information about the helicopter story.
Mhm.
Um, I believe people are operating out of good faith
Oh, very often, very
in
often.
in in trying to in seeking to understand
Yes.
um and trying to understand and support in a meaningful and appropriate way.
Yeah.
Um, but you and I could go into a long digression on gatekeeping and cancellation culture and all those kinds of things. And we're not doing that because we're talking about confounding toads. It's really
Yes,
great
sorry about
fun.
that. Yeah, no,
No,
but
no,
it's
no. But I wanted you to talk about the question. Um, and I appreciate you doing it. And Caroline from behind the scenes is saying, chiming in, it's like saying people can't write sci-fi because they haven't been to space.
yeah.
So anyway, thank you, Kathy, for your question. Thank you, Alexis, for that great answer. Alexis, I was wondering,
Hmm.
is Sir Robin available? Because there are some questions submitted for Rob.
He's not a sir, but
Sorry, I didn't mean to elevate his status.
uh almost certainly, yes.
Okay, if Robin could come to the
What do you
microphone.
want, mortal?
Hi, Robin. How are you?
Miserable. You?
I know I'm actually okay because I am talking to your friend Alexis. I do have some questions for you. Would you deign to answer them?
Make them quick.
Okay, here's one from Dobbs. Might you deign to peek in on the utterly delightful Miss Bickle and write about it for us mere mortals? We desperately want to see her get her own happily ever after, or happy for now, maybe with a certain ambassador.
The fate of Miss Bickle and the ambassador are, of course, known to me, but they were sealed centuries ago. I fully expect to be recalled to the court of Oberon imminently. If I am not, I may be forced to put something on paper for you miserable creatures of flesh.
Well, I do know that it frustrates you that you do have to use money to pay for things in this world, and that might be helpful. Um,
Just jumping back on, I'll also add uh, the the human facing answer to the question is that I do have ideas for Miss Pickle's book, but nothing is decided in stone yet. Two books were contracted initially, and so as always, I don't control this. My publisher does.
got it. Thank you, Alexis. Robin, are you available again?
For now,
Here's one from Lauren. Robin is an incredible narrator. Agree. Who
thank you.
has a very interesting fascination with mortals that he totally doesn't care about, not even at all. After spending centuries stuck in the mortal realm, what mortal practice, Robin, do you secretly appreciate the most? Is it reality TV? Is it pro wrestling? Is it boy bands? What is it?
I assure you, I have no appreciation for any of the activities you use to distract yourself on your slow slide towards the grave. I think I have mentioned an appreciation for professional wrestling, however, but I was lying.
Thank you. And here's one last question for you, Robin, and then we will let you get back to doing whatever you do.
Good.
I love your brand of chaos. In chapter 10, you say that disrupting households is one of the 12 most beloved pastimes of your species. Could you share a few of the other 11 beloved pastimes?
Not all of them, obviously, that would spoil the fun. Stealing socks, abducting children, souring milk, and of course, misleading, irritating mortals about what our favorite pastimes are.
Thank
Goodbye.
you. Thank you. Alexis, are you back?
I am, yes.
Thank you. Please thank Robin if you see him again later.
I absolutely will, although I don't think he'll care.
He won't care, he won't appreciate it, but I do appreciate Robin taking the time to visit with us. Um, Here's a question from Annaline. This series is a departure from your contemporary romance and his proms. What made you turn to fantasy, especially historical fantasy, with such a delightful narrator?
So it's worth pointing out that depending on how long you've been following my career, it's much less of a departure than you might imagine. Some of my earliest works included Prosperity, which was kind of, in fact, almost quite a similar kind of, well, not that similar because of different stuff, but which was a steampunky alt history, magical Lovecraftian elements thing. The Kane series, which was urban fantasy, with again fairies and wizards and stuff. My first print book was actually a fantasy novel called The Affair of the Mysterious Letter, which was a queer fantasy take on Sherlock Holmes set in a weird city connected to all of reality by portals. Um, so in some ways, it's less of a departure than you might imagine. I've always worked in both the romance and speculative fields, and essentially basically Bridgerton hit big. I was thinking, can I do something to capitalize on Bridgerton? I'd already at that point got um, got Lady for Duke in the works, but that was kind of non-Bridgerton-y. That was a lot more sort of more inspired by traditional histroms. And so I thought to myself, well, why don't I use this as a launching point to try and get more of a foothold on the speculative side? Partly because I thought queer magic Bridgerton was a really good elevator pitch.
It's fantastic. I love using it at the bookstore.
Yeah, it's good. And so that's kind of that really. It's Like it's actually something I've always done, and it's something if if you like this, try the other stuff. Um,
Well, we're super glad that you decided to do it.
thank you.
So thank you. Um, Here is one from Julia. One of the many things I love about your work are your character names, and you alluded to this a little bit with the Miss Penworthy question. They're not just interesting and memorable, but also often symbolically significant. Could you talk about how and why you chose the names for the characters in Confounding Oaths?
Ooh, various. Yeah, sure. So I I'm always hesitant to talk about symbolism. Like that's not necessarily the language I would use. But other people use it, of course. Um, off like and the the character naming thing that I sometimes, not always, um bear in mind is that people are named by their parents. Sometimes, not always. And that therefore often a character's name will tell you about their relationship with their parents, the kind of people their parents are. So so the Cesars are called John, Anne, and Mary because their parents very specifically wanted them to have really ordinary English names that would help them fit in English high society, um, but also to be names that could potentially be Francophone if they had to flee to France, because sometimes you do. Hugo, Jean, and Anne and Marie. Um, who? Oh, there's so many characters. Lizzie Bickle. Her parents are both like weird flighty types, so they called their daughter Lysistrata. Um, which occasionally comes out, but she generally goes by Lizzie because she's less inclined to be called Lysistrata because she's less like her parents in some ways. Um, Malis Mitchellmore. I think I just had always wanted to write a character called Malis. If I'm honest, I think it's just a good name. Um, Georgiana. I'm sorry. I'm going to do characters from the whole verse. Georgiana Landrake had the had basically had the Nigella Lawson thing. It's like her father's name was George. He named one of his sons George. He just liked stuff to be named after him.
Mm-hmm.
The irregulars variously. Oh, I'm another George as well. So Kumar's first name is George, named after his father, but he doesn't have his father's surname because he didn't actually marry his mother, but he did send him to Eton. Um, Sal uses a specifically kind of gender ambiguous name because they're gender fluid. Barryson is a little bit of a joke because he uses the so he uses the kind of the Norse tradition of using a patronymic.
Mm-hmm.
And his dad's name is Barry because he's from like the northeast of England, so he's Barryson. Um, uh, some of the irregulars in particular do just have like kind of regular names from people. So like Jackson's got a deliberately slightly generic name because he's one of those like kind of slightly anonymous people. Callahan's got a very typical Irish name of the period. Who else is on the ambassador is called the ambassador. He's an ambassador. I'm trying to think if there's anyone.
How about Orestes James?
Oh, Orestes James, of course, yes. Um, so I wanted so again I wanted Captain James to have quite a down to earth name, because he's quite a down to earth man, and again as opposed to Mr. Cesar, who is obviously from quite an aristocratic background. But a lot of working class people have quite unusual first names. A lot of working class people have interests beyond what you might expect. The other reason for it is that there's again, so that one actually is symbolic because like part of the reason he's called Orestes is because of the Iphigenia connection that comes in later on, which I am is actually sort of flagged up in the book. Who else is in there? There's such a lot. I can't believe I forgot. I can't believe I forgot Orestes. That's very silly of me. It's a huge cast.
It is. And now, okay, hang on. I am raising my hand, which means I'm about to do a spoiler, friends. So I'm giving you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Here I go. Alexis J. Hall.
And keep your hand up while the spoilers are on, otherwise it's
I
spoil.
Alexis J. Hall,
Yeah,
you made me cry so hard.
I'm sorry.
You aren't really.
I'm not ready now. You're right.
No, you're not. But except for the epilogue in Lady for a Duke, this is the hardest I've cried, Alexis Hall. My hand is still
I'm
in the air.
sorry.
It was so good.
Oh, good. I'm glad.
It was so good. And I didn't see it coming, and I should have seen it coming, but I was so wrapped up in the action that I didn't see it coming. Okay,
Okay.
let's talk about the irregulars. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh, I love them so much.
Thank you very much.
That and the graphic that you and Mary collaborated on your
Hmm.
social media. I've now just dropped the book on the floor.
Yeah.
That is so much fun. And I keep thinking, well, I'm a little bit of Sal, I'm a little bit of Kumar, and boy,
Hmm.
I love Barryson. But oh my
Hmm.
gosh, it's just what a great group of characters you created.
Thank you very much.
It just hang on, picking up the book.
It's just it's that yeah. I've always wanted to do one of those like kind of like
The
almost like
irregulars.
one of those almost heist movie crews,
Yeah,
where
it was.
like
It's
kind of like
exactly what it was.
yeah.
And
Yeah, it's sort of very loosely inspired by the Chosen Many and Sharp. But it's like they're just one of those like kind of yeah group of slightly weird, eclectic people getting together to do a thing.
it was, I know, but it was so good. And they were so, even though many of them didn't have a lot of time on the page, they were so finely drawn that they just exploded into your mind.
Thank you very much. No, well, yeah, no, it's because I often write books with quite large ensemble casts. Having a because I often write like a this is one of those difficult. People occasionally do ask you, "How do you achieve this?" And the answer is, "I don't really know. I've just been doing it for a long time." Like I like to feel that communicating quite bold characters quite quickly is a skill I have had to develop over the
Well,
years.
it's a skill that you have to build. And that is one of, in many of your books, that's a great joy and a hallmark of it is this great supporting cast. And it just popped in my head. What if the irregulars were in modern day and they had a text thread? Can you imagine that? Like William would just keep going and be like, what?
Hmm.
And they, oh, that's going to give me a lot of joy. I also just want to talk about all of chapter 10. I just, it is
Remind me
so,
which was chapter 10. I'll admit that I
chapter
don't.
10 is when, Miss Caesar comes back and
Yeah,
then goes to the home. Oh,
yeah,
Miss Caesar comes back and
yeah,
goes home,
yeah.
and there are a number of different difficult conversations
Hmm.
happening in that house.
Yeah.
So thank you for chapter 10. Okay, now I'm going back to audience questions because all of a sudden I just felt I had to say those things to you.
No, of course. Go ahead.
Here's one from 1113. Are there any particular characters from your work that you return to in your heart and mind more than others, who you can't shake or who have left a more lasting mark?
So people will know that people who have followed a lot of these, been to a lot of these, um, will know that I don't. I'm bad with favorites in general. Like I don't really have a favorite color, let alone like favorite of my own characters. Generally, I'm mostly thinking about the characters I'm working on at the moment, just because just for kind of practical reasons. Um, like I have a lot of books and I am working on a lot of stuff.
Okay. Um, so speaking of working on a lot of books,
Hmm.
here's a question from Shelley. How many books are you typically working on at the same time?
Um, it varies somewhat because things like it's okay. You know how buses come along in threes.
Okay.
Okay, like there's like there is a stereotype that bus like you wait for hours for a bus, then three come along
Yeah,
at
yeah,
once.
yeah, yeah.
And this is a real thing that happens because of the nature of random systems. If you have things that are evenly spaced and then you randomly delay some of them, they naturally cluster. into groups of about three. So I'll quite often be writing something, editing something, pitching something,
Okay. Okay.
kind of in a slightly interleavy kind of way.
Mhm.
Just because of how, because I work with multiple publishers and on a variety of deadlines, and so um things get kind of pushed into each other in ways that aren't necessarily. I'd love to just be working on one thing at once, but just it never quite works out that way.
Right.
Like
Do
there's
you,
almost always an opportunity that's coming up that I need to jump on, and there's almost always something that I need to be looking at that's got a turnaround time while I'm also working on a thing. Just
do you,
it's like buses, it's bus rules.
right. If you have things that are equally pressing,
Hmm.
do you try to space them out during the day? Do you try to make some sort of mental
I
distinction?
should probably have more concrete strategy than I do, is the
Okay.
honest answer.
Okay. I mean,
Like
I
I,
can't
the other
imagine
the
what that is.
other the other thing I will say is that I will always say like the situation I am in is not intentional. Um After Boyfriend Material got big, I started getting a lot more opportunities and was essentially too afraid to say no to any of them, as a result of which I am doing slightly too much at the moment, and that is eventually going to come back to bite me.
Yes, and I agree that that could happen all the way. Just side note, friends, our mini cam that would broadcast Alexis's book cover is apparently on the fritz. So instead of seeing the cover of Confounding Notes, you are looking at the lovely visage of Valerie Kaler, who owns Blue Willow Bookshop. Instead of the cover, we apologize for the technical difficulties. Um, I appreciate that that is the situation, and I understand your desire and interest in taking opportunities and making opportunities as they come. A, I, hope you balance, find work-life balance as much as you can. And B, I mean, I'm just excited for any opportunity.
Hmm.
Because more opportunities for you means more books that we get to read.
Yeah, that's very kind
So,
of you.
well, I kind of do like your stuff.
Yeah.
All right, I am gonna wrap up pretty soon. Here's one from Annalene. The Jane Austen fandom is my favorite part, so I'm curious how that came to be.
Oh gosh. Oh, the whole. Oh yes. Apart, I think it just felt like the kind of thing Lizzie would do more than anything else. I mean, in some ways, it's just it's. In some ways, it's just a shameless attempt to bait people to writing fanfic. But it's it it just felt like Lizzie was the kind of person that would engage with literature in that way, like who and because obviously she is a little bit anachronistic in a lot of her manners, and I also just read. Also, I have a very cheap sense of humor, and I and so I like what like there's just a recurring joke of like either Lizzie using quite anachronistic language or using pseudo period language for anachronistic concepts, and there's a little reference to it in the beginning, which talks about tinging, which is clearly just shipping. And I kind of wanted to build on that into just giving her like a fanfic group. And also I don't think I'm ever going to stop finding Lizzie referring to Jane Austen as the anonymous lady author of Sense and Sensibility funny, just because as far as I can tell, this is period accurate at the time. Like she was just known as the anonymous lady author of Sense and Sensibility, because early 19th century, and yeah, it doesn't really go any further than that. It's just a joke, but it's kind of joke I like.
Well, it's a delightful joke, and it's a delightful trait of Miss Pickle, and I really, really, of course, want Robin to be able to go back to the court of Lord Oberon, but I also really would like Miss Pickle.
Hmm.
All right, here is one more from Carrie. building off your metacognition. Do you
Mhm.
ever find you need to do you ever find yourself revising character voice during the the editing process?
Um, yes and no. Like it sometimes takes a while to find the voice of a character, and then what you'll often find is that the voice a character has in the early book isn't the voice it evolves into in the later book, or it takes a while to like kind of get the voice consistent. So like not in a I don't think I ever had a character like completely change or be completely different, but there are times when it just takes a while to get like speech patterns down and things, or like kind of rhythms, or like and a lot of the editing process is kind of going through going, particularly if something's in either first person or deep third person narration, of looking at it and kind of going, is this the kind of word this character would use on quite a micro level? But it's not like I've never gone through and been like, actually, in retrospect, this character should have completely different speech patterns. It's
Okay.
only ever been like, actually, the speech patterns that I had worked out by the end need to be consistent throughout.
You ever read your work aloud when you're working on it?
Sometimes.
Okay. That would just pop in there thinking about that. Um, Side note, while I was doing some exploring and you were discussing Affair of the Mysterious Letter, it's narrated by Nicholas Bolton.
Yes.
Well, I know what my next is. I've read it. Now I'm going to listen to it with his dulcet tones.
Mhm.
It's chiming the top of the hour in my house. So
Yes.
again, my friend, thanks for spending time with us. To everyone in the audience, thanks for spending time with us. Thanks for your patience with my flailings and flinging books on the floor and not remembering book plates today. But we so appreciate your support. We love the community that you have provided us at Blue Willow. Thank you to Alexis and his team and his publishers for allowing that to happen. We're so grateful for it. So, Alexis, I hope you have a lovely evening. I hope
I
you
had a
come.
lovely evening. Thank you so much.
Okay, bye, y'all.
Goodbye.